The conquest of Canaan had finally come to an end. After years of brutal fighting, Joshua called the warriors from the eastern tribes, Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, praised them for their unwavering loyalty, and sent them home in peace with his blessing. But before the dust could even settle on their journey home, a shocking discovery was made. The returning soldiers had stopped at the banks of the Jordan River and constructed a massive, unauthorized stone altar. This map of the Holy Land illustrates exactly why this was so alarming. Looking at the tribal allotments, you can see the Jordan River carving right down the middle, acting as a stark physical boundary, separating the western tribes from their eastern brothers. What should have been the first breath of a hard-won peace instantly became the flashpoint for an imminent civil war. The western tribes didn't send a messenger to ask for an explanation. Their immediate response was to mobilize their entire army to slaughter their own brothers. To understand this extreme reaction, we have to look at their recent, deeply traumatic history. The Israelites had vivid memories of the incident at Peor, where idolatry led to a plague, and the sin of a man named Achan, who stole forbidden items during the siege of Jericho. Both of those events ingrained a terrifying theological concept into the national psyche: collective punishment. They believed that if one small faction of their community rebelled or fell into idolatry, it would act like a spiritual infection, bringing God's wrath down on the entire nation. So the Western army gathering at Shiloh wasn't marching out of hatred. They were acting on a desperate assumption that they had to destroy this rogue altar immediately, or their entire civilization would be wiped out. But right on the brink of bloodshed, the Western leadership hit the brakes. Instead of leading with swords, they dispatched a high-level diplomatic delegation led by Phinehas the priest to confront the builders. This mission struck a careful balance between truth and love. The delegation was fully armed and entirely prepared to fight, but they deliberately chose to give their brothers a chance to speak first. When they crossed the river, they didn't mince words. Phinehas delivered a blistering accusation, charging the eastern tribes with outright treason and a severe breach of covenant trust. At this moment, the survival of the Israelite project hung entirely on how the eastern tribes would respond to this aggressive interrogation. The eastern tribes were utterly horrified. They immediately invoked three distinct, powerful names for God: El, Elohim, and Yahweh, in a solemn oath, vehemently denying any intent of rebellion. This photograph of the Jordan River reveals the true source of their actions. This expanse of water acted as a formidable natural barrier. Looking at this divide, they feared Western Israelites would eventually point to this boundary to exclude their descendants from the faith. They could already hear the hypothetical rejection echoing across the water. You have no part in the Lord because you live on the other side. The eastern tribes hadn't built the structure out of defiance against Joshua. They built it out of a fierce, protective love, trying to guarantee their future children would always have a place in the spiritual community. They explained that the structure was never intended for sacrifices. It was an exact architectural replica, an altar of witness designed purely for evidence. By building a physical copy of the true altar, they solved the geographic problem. If their descendants were ever questioned, they could point to this massive monument as permanent, tangible proof that they worshipped the exact same God. Hearing this, the tension evaporated. Phinehas and the delegation realized the truth, and their righteous anger immediately gave way to profound relief and joy. By choosing to pause and listen, the Israelites averted a massacre. A structure that was almost the catalyst for a civil war was transformed into an enduring monument of their unity. It is incredibly easy to look at people separated from us by geography, culture, or background, and immediately project our worst assumptions onto their actions. But taking a deliberate pause to communicate, listening before we act, is often the only bridge capable of turning a potential division into a deeper sense of community. This history also reveals something critical about spiritual legacy. Faith does not automatically pass to the next generation. It requires intentional, visible markers to survive the test of time and distance. So the question we have to ask ourselves is clear. What tangible altars, what traditions, actions, or deliberate witnesses are we actively building right now to prove the reality of our faith to the generations that follow us?